Hello, all my crafty people out there. It's time for our weekly project. If you haven't been here before, my name is Stephanie and I upcycle clothing into different clothing or accessories, and they're usually items from my local thrift stores. So, this week I have thrifted this vest. It's a large vest. It's larger than I need for myself, but there's a plan, as always. This was $3.09 from my local thrift store, American Thrift. And I also picked up this, which, yes, it's green. And yeah, I think I have a thing for this color right now. But I think it's a really pretty green. It's a kind of jersey top. I think it's supposed to be a top, but it's again, very large for me. So plenty of fabric. And it was $4.29. So we're talking about, seven and a half roughly with taxes and everything. So I think that we'll have a good time with this project. If you haven't been here before and you want to check it out, watch, like, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will catch y'all at the table. Okay, everybody, here's what we're working with. We've got a plain khaki vest with functioning pockets, and it is a little large, and the reason I got it a little large is because I want it to be more of a jacket than a fitted vest. So, we're going to be adding sleeves to this vest for those kind of chilly mornings, but not so chilly afternoons like we've had lately. And essentially we're going to do this. We're going to add this dress. Now this dress is folded in half, or top, folded in half, so you can get an idea of what the bell sleeve will look like. It's going to be kind of big, but I'm good with that. This is also a blank canvas. So there's a back, there's shoulders, there's buttons that could be added. There's all kinds of things we can do to embellish it. My main concern right now, though, is teaching you how to get the sleeves in out of this shirt. Now, this is folded as best I can because it is jersey fabric, but I'm trying to make sure I meet the seams. Now, the front is a little bigger. The back is a little bigger than the front. So the seams aren't perfect, but that's okay. We're going to cut up the sides, and we may just cut that seam off completely in order to separate those sides to make our sleeve. So I thought what we would do is we would kind of draw it out like a sleeve. I don't really know if that's necessary. I think if I went straight across here, it would be fine. But we're going to give it a little curve. So here's the bottom of my front of my shirt. So I don't want to go up all the way. So I'm just thinking we will curve it like that. Maybe a little closer here, because we want to preserve as much fabric as we can for the length. Now, of course, that can all be different depending on what you're using. You could be using a long skirt, a longer blouse, a dress, whatever you want to use. This does not have to be perfect. I'm just giving it a curve. I think it'll work into the sleeve a little better if we do that. So it's not a huge curve though. So we're just going to take our scissors and we're going to trim this away like this. And I'm catching all four sides. Like that. Now, we're going to trim it up a little, obviously. It got a little out of hand right there. But essentially, we've got what we need to make sleeves. Now, what we want to do here And I have lined up the bottom to make sure that the lace is lined up and everything. But you can see that this seam, it's farther back on one side than the other, just like anything you would wear, usually your shirts, your blouses, your dresses. There's more fabric in one side than the other. So what we're going to do for this, since we've got a lot of width, I think we're fine on width. I'm going to just trim this off with the rotary cutter. And that way we will make sure we get everything we need, but we don't need these seams. Okay. So I'm going to just trim this up. It's going to be kind of challenging to go through the lace, but we'll see if we can do it. Yep, going to be a little challenging. Let's get through the jersey part first. Get all of our seams cut off. Let's see. There we go. That's a pretty clean cut. And we got rid of all the serge lines. Except that little piece right there. No big deal. Good. All right, now we have, sorry if the camera shook a little there. I was putting some muscle into it. Now we have 2 sleeves. Awesome. Oh, well, that's the back side of it. But you know what I'm saying. 2 sleeves. Now, we got to get them pinned into, we'll probably have to go ahead and serge the sides of them to make them a whole sleeve before we pin them into our vest. That way we'll just have the armhole to contend with. And it may be a little big, it may not. Let's give it a run. Let's give it a little test here. There's our armhole we're working with. And let's just say we go from side to side here where the corners are, or where it would be under the arm. And I think we're going to be almost perfect as far as the length goes. But any excess we have, we can do a little gather, a little tuck here and there, and kind of ease it into this sleeve. All of it's stretchy fabric, so that shouldn't be a problem. Thing we've got to make sure when we go over to the serger to serge our arms up. And you can do this with a straight stitch. You don't have to have a serger. Straight stitch it, and then it might be helpful to put a zigzag over it. So I'm going to make sure that they are right sides together, which that's our pretty lace. So right sides together. We're going to go over, and I personally am going to serge it, and I'm going to serge from the corner underneath the arm all the way to the hemline on both of these to create the entire sleeve first. And then we'll worry about how we're going to get them into the vest. Now, the lace at the bottom is kind of hard to match up unless you cut it, you know, where it's perfectly aligned. So the best thing to do, and you do want the bottom to match more so than the top, and you want both, but that's the important one. The thing you can do then is you can line up the 2 ends where the fabric meets the lace, and then use that to line up your end. That'll help you make sure you've got everything lined up properly, and will end up as lined up as possible up at the very top as well. Okay, it is time to put our sleeve in our armhole. And what I have found, I did test it out by pinning this one down. And what I found is that the center mark on these sleeves isn't exactly lined up with the seam line. Now you could line it up with the seam line, but I found it was better to kind of let it, I don't want to say naturally fold, but you know what I'm talking about, where it doesn't quite meet the seam. So what I'm doing as far as where the center mark is, so I'm putting a pin at the top where this natural fold happens. And then I'm putting a pin down here at the bottom where, again, it's outside of the seam, but it's more of a natural fold in the sleeve, or where the sleeve's going to go. So this is turned right side in, or wrong side out. The sleeve is turned right side out, so this is what it would look like. This is normal, I guess that's what you want to say. And I'm going to find the center of the top of the sleeve by folding it in half, making sure my bottom seam is down here. And I can see this is my top seam. So I'm going to put it inside the jacket and thread it through to the sleeve, just like this. So now, essentially, I've got right side touching right side with this sleeve, which would be the normal way you'd put a sleeve in. Here's the caveat. The way I'm putting these sleeves in, it's going to take this kind of, I don't want to say decorative, but this finished edge of the armhole, and it's going to turn it in. So it's not going to be visible from the outside. It's also going to make it look more like it was constructed this way. However, if you wanted this to show, on the outside and the sleeve to be tucked underneath it, then what you would need to do is you would need to blindly sew it with the right side to the wrong side of the sleeve, like this. In other words, if you wanted this edging to show, you'd have to take your right side turned out sleeve and put it in here. And it's a blind sew, because you'd have to pin it from an odd angle and sew on the outside. It can be done. I have done it, but it's I really don't want this seam this time to show. I want it to be a little less obvious that I have altered this. So I am more than happy to take that seam in with the addition of the sleeve. So again, I'm putting right sides to right sides, pinning from the wrong side of the armhole. I'm going to pin my 2 points first that I know are where I want the center. I say center, you know what I mean, the seam. There's not a seam at the top, but if there were, that's where I would want it to be. It's easier for me to pin it from the inside, and that way what I do when I'm sewing it from the outside, the pins are still poking out where I can pull them. I found with the other sleeve that there was a very slight excess at the top, and I put some very slight tucks at the top. This, of course, will be all dependent on what you use, whether or not it fits perfectly, whether or not it needs any kind of tucks or gathers. That will be your own individual process because of your materials. But mine does require a little bit of tucking at the top, which I'm just putting some really small, not even maybe a 1/16 of an inch pleat, 4 of them up at the top, so it kind of eases it into place. And how I do that is first I pin it as far up as I want it to be flat, obviously. And I leave myself this little bit of gap here, and that's what I'll end up pleating. But I want to do it from both sides first to make sure I don't need to adjust where the quote seam is, where the top of the sleeve is. You shouldn't have to, but you know, when you're making stuff out of pre-constructed things, you have some new rules to follow. So let me finish pinning my armholes, and then we'll go over to the machine, sew them down, and that way we'll know whether or not we need to top stitch afterwards. It's all an experiment. Okay, I'm going to run this armhole with a zipper foot, and you might have a narrower foot with your machine. This is the narrow foot I have that allows me to get right up against this seam, because it's bulky and I don't want to go over the seam. I don't want my foot to be riding on top of the seam. I want it to ride right beside it. And I think this zipper foot will work. But like I said, you may have a plethora of feet that I don't have for your machine. This is my usual foot, but it's, like I said, it'll ride on top of that seam and it'll be too bulky. So let's give this a try. All right, everybody. Where is it? This is what it came out looking like. Now, all I did is replace the sleeves. This is still a blank canvas. You can still do more. You can do anything you want. But I thought the sleeve edition looks pretty cool. And it's just a matter of having enough fabric and whatever you thrift, whether it be a skirt, a dress, another blouse. So this was a large blouse. I just loved the ruffle at the end, or the lace at the end, so I think it turned out pretty good. I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you like this kind of content, like, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will catch y'all on the flip side of our next project.